Thank you, Dr. Brosnan, for letting me be a part of this today. It's not very often in Pinehurst, North Carolina, that I get to wear a hoodie on September 2nd. So the weather's good here. It's nice to be kind of over the hump of the humidity for a little while, and got some great golfing weather the next. Gosh, it looks really good for the next foreseeable future on our forecast. So thanks for letting me be with you all today. I'll tell you a little bit about myself in Pinehurst. I've been at Pinehurst for over 25 years now. Graduated from NC State in December of 2000. Before that, the summer before, I came and did an internship and never left. There was always something going on here at Pinehurst that intrigued me about learning, whether it was then trying the new bent grasses, going from the G's to the A's and learning more about the bent grasses we were using to host in championships, and then converting to Bermudas, and then building golf courses. All that has happened while I've been here. So didn't have to go a lot of different places to learn a lot of different things. I just was able to stay here and do all that. So in my 25 years, I've been able to be a part of 3 U.S. Opens, 2 U.S. Amateurs, the Women's U.S. Open, and we have a really great team of superintendents. Our director of golf course maintenance, Bob Farron, and our golf course maintenance manager, Kevin Robinson. We oversee over 225 golf course maintenance employees here at the resort and through our 10 golf courses. And as a resort, we employ over 1,600 employees. So we have 4 hotels, the 10 golf courses, the food and beverage outlets, and all that. We're the second largest employer in Moore County, only behind the hospital that's here. So we're a really big ship. We'll welcome really close to 400,000 golfers this year to the resort. And their expectation is everything's going to be perfect, just like all golfers, whether they're playing a mom and pop's $35 muni or here at Pinehurst. So that's kind of the resort in a snapshot and what we have. Toss it back to you, Dr. Brosnan, with anything else.
All right, John, thank you. And if you can mute yourself while I speak, that'll be part of our baton tossing back and forth. I think everybody knows Pinehurst for the U.S. Opens, right? You look behind you, you see all the flags. You kind of alluded to this in your comments that it's much more than the U.S. Opens, but maybe walk the folks through who they might tune in on Sunday and catch the last round. What's a U.S. Open setup look like? Not so much how the golf course get set up, but how do you go from it's September of 2025 at Pinehurst, and I think you guys are due to have the 2030 U.S. Open on number 2. Like, what's that process look like pre-event all the way through Sunday afternoon and they're giving out a trophy?
So we have the 2029 men's and women's U.S. Opens, and we are part of what the USGA deemed an anchor site a few years ago. So what we have is between now and 2047, what's that, 4 more U.S. Opens. So we'll go 29, 35, 41, 47. And every time we host a championship, it's about a 5-year window of preparation. So from now until 2047, we're in a constant mode of preparation for a U.S. Open. It takes that long to get a lot of the things in place, whether it's infrastructure, how they're going to park people, how they're going to move people around. So last year in 24, we hosted the U.S. Open, and in November of 24, we get together with the USGA and rehash what worked well, what didn't work well, what are some things we need to consider for the future. It could be something as small as we need to add a few yards here, or it could be something as big for the operations team. We need more paved roads so we can have 2-way 18-wheeler access to get to the compound where they unload all the trucks of materials it takes to build the facility. So that happens in November. So you go from one now to preparing for the next. We're in a constant mode of preparation. This past summer, we were closed for 3 weeks for aerification. We built 4 more tees for them to add some width to some tees, to give them some angle options, or to give them some more square footage on some tees on their championship tees. We added a few yards to the 5th hole to make it a little bit longer par 5. We added some yardage to the 13th hole, which is a shorter par 4, but they wanted the layup to be a little tougher, so we added a little yardage there. So all those things we're constantly doing now in preparation for 29. The operations team is based in Pinehurst, so the group within the USGA that puts on the hospitality suites, all the outside the ropes, they are actually based here in Pinehurst and have been for over 20 years. So those are people that are in our community that we know. So we get to work side by side with them, which makes it nice because our kids play sports together. We work with them. We want their part of the big show to go down just as well as our part, which is inside the ropes. So it makes it a nice event for us because we're all truly working together as a team to make sure it goes off without a hitch. Because there are days, really starting in January of the U.S. Open year, the U.S. Opens and Father's Day weekend. So you've got 6 months where there's days in January, there's more tractor trailers coming in and out of the golf course than there are golfers. Just constantly unloading materials. We put a couple miles of potable water lines in last fall for the hydration stations. So, fall of 23, so that there would be more places for people to fill up water bottles. We put in miles of underground 3-phase power. That way they could plug the tents in versus running generators. Knowing they're coming back every 5-6 years, that made more sense. So a lot of that infrastructure was put in place. We paved about a half a mile of service road to accommodate some of the tractor trailers getting to the unloading sites. And then now have plans to do more as we saw we need more. So from the outside the ropes perspective, a lot of going on. Inside the ropes, and then what we try to do with the golf course is just take every summer, that Father's Day week, as an opportunity to learn what if this week was the U.S. Open. What are these weather conditions? Document the high temperature, the low temperature, the humidity, how the greens are reacting, and try to mock up a U.S. Open every Father's Day week. That way we can have some answers to some questions that we may be posed. Last year in 24, the weather was perfect. It was hot. It was dry. We were able to dial the greens in exactly where we wanted. If we'd have had the U.S. Open in 25, we'd have been washed out because we had about 8 inches of rain that week. So it's really trying, from when we converted the greens to Bermuda in 2014, to take every summer to try to document what happens when we do this, so we can be prepared in 29 when it comes again, how we can make sure the greens are as fast and as firm as possible given any weather circumstances. So we've got 2 things we're considering: the outside the ropes preparations, and then the inside the ropes preparations. That's what really keeps us on our toes as we work the next 4 years to prepare for 29.
So, one of the things I think the folks that are listening might be curious about is, do you scale up personnel wise in a US Open year? Do you scale up equipment wise? I mean, given the nature of the undertaking, what does that look like in terms of the scale up for you and your crew? You have 10 golf courses on property, soon to be 11. Are you pulling crews in from the other golf course properties and to help with the lift that is getting that US Open off and running? Like, can you talk a little bit just about, how you might scale up resource wise, all the way down to like fertilizers and chemicals to steel to the whole gamut?
Yeah, like I said earlier, we've got 250 golf course maintenance employees here at the resort, and we could host the U.S. Open without any other volunteers if those other facilities were closed. But our satellite courses 6 through 10, they're all open and they're hosting corporate guests and people that are playing golf, our members, during the U.S. Open. So they still have to maintain their golf courses. Our staff on course number 2 is about 40 people on payroll. Most of those are part timers, so they don't work all day every day. But a given um, Father's Day week, when we're not having the U.S. Open, we may have 25 golf course maintenance employees taking care of course 2. During the U.S. Open, it takes about 120 to prepare the golf course for the 6:45, 1 and 10 start, and that is required of us for the U.S. Open. And the way course number 2 is routed, we can't really work on another hole without making too much noise for all the place. So we really have to be off the golf course by 6:45. So that's all 50 acres of our fairways mowed, tees, surrounds, greens, everything has to be completed by 6:45, and we have to be off the golf course. So that's anywhere from 110 to 120 people that it takes to get ready. We do accept volunteers that are primarily alumni from Pinehurst that have worked here because it's a great way for us all to get back together. Different volunteer groups, people that want to come here. The catch in Pinehurst is we're not a major city. We don't have a lot of accommodation. So if you volunteer here, you have to provide your own housing. So most people know somebody they can crash on their couch. They can do whatever to get through the week. But the volunteers show up the Sunday before and they stay until the Sunday of the championship. And we'll use about 50 volunteers is what we had last time. So the other golf courses, there are people that work here at Pinehurst, let's say on course number 8, that really want to be a part of the U.S. Open. They want to come mow a green, they want to come mow a fairway, whatever. So we certainly take care of our Pinehurst employees and get them put in the position first, and then take the volunteers to make sure we have the staff we need. Um, it's a unique setup for us because we do have that. Somewhere like Oakmont that's 18 holes, they require a lot more volunteers because they don't have the people. Um, it's certainly rewarding for them though that they get to be a part of it and see their work on television, and get to participate in all the fun. That's the food and the uniforms and all the tickets and everything that they get to be a part of it. So that's kind of the people and how we build up. Agronomically, sure, it's a high stress situation. So most of our programs stay very similar because as we've evaluated over the years, these things are working. Um, will we make an extra preventative fungicide application? Sure, we'll make sure our bases are covered there. Fertility, it depends on the weather. This year, 24, excuse me, we had a really warm spring, which was great. So we got out a little bit early with our bulk spread application. Um, and so that went out in mid-April with some ammonium sulfate. Got a little fertilizer out there. Everything was growing well. Typically, we fertilize mid-May, and we decided to shelve that one because we didn't need too much grass growing. We were happy with the application we made in April. And so mid-May, we were looking good. We were only a couple weeks from the championship, so we didn't make that application. Got a few growth regulator apps on fairways. We were sitting really good. Greens were behaving. They had come out of winter. Our cultural practices, such as top dressing and verticutting, we were able to start on time. One major difference is we go from using a ride-on top dresser on a Pro Gator. Do we do push spreading, bag dry sand, just to keep a little traffic off the greens and get the sand worked into the canopy a little differently. That entire spring, so really go back to the fall prior. So October of 23 through the U.S. Open, we don't triplex greens, which we do every other year. Like right now, we only walk mow, and that's not for the putting surfaces themselves. That's more to protect the green surrounds from the traffic of a triplex mower turning. If you're familiar with number 2, you realize that we have short grass around all the greens and extreme slopes. And so if we're driving a triplex and turning, it can be difficult on those areas. So to preserve those areas, we do more walk mowing, which is more labor in the of time leading up. Our moisture management practices become more dialed in. We do a lot more hand watering in the weeks leading up versus overhead irrigation, just to start to really learn the greens, how they're going to respond, what's the lowest moisture level we can maintain and have visually appealing turf. And even if it starts to dry out a little bit and turn brown, how's our putting quality? Being able to use the GS3 ball to evaluate how the ball is rolling, speed-wise, trueness and smoothness. Those are all things we really work on leading up to it that we don't do every other year. It's just not, a requirement. Our target green speed on course number 2 is between 11 and 11 and a half any day of the year. That's the speed that we can get people through. They're not taking too long to play. They're not putting off greens. Our guests, through their survey comments, are happy. Our members are happy. But then for US Open, it's 13 and a half, 14. And so learning those differences and what the moisture um, levels and how they drive that smoothness and trueness and the speed, and backing off the fertilizer on greens, how all that works into how you prepare. One thing that we do now is we measure the performance of 3 greens. That's all we're really concerned about. We have a good average. During a championship, you're measuring every green multiple times during the day because you want them all to perform the same. So everything is ramped up, everything is more scrutinized, and you've got a lot of help to get there.
For anyone that's ever been to Pinehurst and been fortunate enough to play number 2 or even walk number 2 with some of the contouring, a 13 on number 2 with some of the movement within those greens would be that'd be lightning quick, John. Like trying to stop it at the before the drain in your bathtub type quick. That's aggressive, but understandably so for the nation's national championship. One thing is interesting, and you kind of mentioned the change about walking on top dressing sand rather than driving on top dressing sand. I think you mentioned earlier, this is several U.S. Opens for you now at Pinehurst. That's a real minute change about how you're putting on top dressing sand, but what are some of the other changes that have happened kind of over time as the U.S. Opens become this bigger, more just every year? It seems like it's bigger from a build out standpoint, and certainly you go back, you watch old videos of old U.S. Opens, and you can tell the maintenance intensity of the turf that's there is different. Like, what have you kind of seen in your time, putting U.S. Opens together?
You're right. I mean, a lot of the focus, especially, you know, leading up to it for us, which people don't understand, is the focus on the fan experience. What do we have to do to prepare to make it more enjoyable? Now, it's only going to be so enjoyable in the Sandhills of North Carolina the second week of June. It's going to be hot. It's going to be humid. But one of the primary tasks we were asked to work on is dust control. We have sand cart paths. We don't have very many linear feet of concrete or paved surfaces. So as spectators are walking, they're stirring up the dust. The pine straw breaks down. It becomes this brown dust. You get home, you take your shoes off, and your feet are bright white from not having any of this dust, and all the way up to your knees is just dirt. So how can we control dust? So we were tasked to get a water truck and drive the cart paths during our evening maintenance to try to reduce dust during the championship. Odd questions like, is the silverware that we're using in our corporate hospitality match up to what they're using in golf course maintenance hospitality? Is it compostable plastic? Just you get these weird strains. Like, I never thought that I would be asked, hey, the utensils you're using down there, are they compostable? I'm like, good question. I don't know. Well, they need to be. Okay, I'll find out. So you're dealing with our purchaser at the resort. Hey, can we get this stuff to make sure our meals and maintenance are meeting what the standard is by the USGA and their sponsors? So things that you don't really think about: the dust control, the fan experience, how the image looks on TV if there's too much dust. I remember watching some on Sunday this year, the following week when they would re-air the broadcast, and like, yeah, I see it when they're showing the second hole. There's a big hospitality area right at the second, and when the camera crews and their carts would drive, you could see that cloud of dust running out across the fairways. So those are all things that we're asked to help with. Um, get a call, hey, we need this tree, the limb cut because the camera that swings around back behind this tee, that limb's in the way. That could be Sunday night before the championship, or even Wednesday after the practice round when they set up some of the TrackMan or shot link type stuff. Those little details that you have to work out to make sure all those outside entities are taken care of. Whether a tee is big enough to get the 360 cam, that thing on rails that goes behind the golfer, whether all that's cleared off. So those are all things that we have to deal with.
So another thing, John, kind of moving maybe a little bit away from the U.S. Open, because a lot of the folks who are listening, they might have seen it on TV, but not engaged with it. But one of the things I think that's unique about Pinehurst is, and you kind of noted this in your introductory remarks, is it's just so big and there's just so much golf. Like I know you and I have joked, it's a little bit of a golf factory, right? Like we're just churning out rounds of golf. Um, I think traffic stress is a thing everybody deals with. If you're listening to this and say you're an extension agent, you're dealing with the local county's high school football field. Well, traffic stress is an issue there. Certainly in golf, we have seen more rounds played go up, which is awesome, right? I mean, that's what our golf courses are there for, is to be used by golfers. Um, but there's some traffic stress that's related to that. And I think you of all people in the industry have this unique situation where you might have more traffic on property than really in a concentrated area than anyone. Like, what are some of the ways you guys deal with traffic? And for me, and you and I have talked about this, like I'm particularly interested in like traffic stress mitigation in the shoulders, right? Like when we're running rounds played on Bermuda grass and October and November and December. I mean, I get it. You pay what it costs to go play at Pinehurst. You want to show up and go play and have your day at Pinehurst. But the grass is certainly vulnerable at that time. So, talk a little bit about some of the things you guys just do from a traffic management standpoint.
Yeah, Pinehurst is 365 days of golf now. It's funny if you look back in the history of golf at Pinehurst. It was built as a retreat kind of from the northern winters at first, and it was halfway from Boston, New York down to Florida. And so it was a place for people to stop kind of in those shoulder seasons. So early on, it was more fall, winter play, and then it transitioned to kind of more spring, some summer, back to some fall. So over time, this place is really changed when it was busy. Well, now it's just all the time. We certainly get an influx of golf in the spring from resort. Everybody's golf course gets busier after the Masters. Everybody gets the bug. They want to play more golf. And for us, it's mid-March that it really picks up with the high revenue, high demand golf. And then it gets to about early July, but that's when our tournament season, North-South Amateur, U.S. Kids Golf, people that are on summer vacation. And then now we're transitioning into our fall season of high revenue, big resort golf. And that'll go all the way to Thanksgiving. And then as the weather dictates from Thanksgiving to the 1st of March, if it's nice out, there's people playing golf. I mean, our tee sheets are full. We're booking golf into the spring of 27 right now. So how do we handle all this golf that happens when the grass isn't recovering? If I'm wearing a hoodie today, divots aren't growing. They're not recovering as good as it feels. I go out on the range tee this morning. I'm like, man, we're really running out of space and we've got to make it another 2 months off of grass. What are we going to do? And then we've got to be ready for next spring. So we're lucky that we have the help from Dr. Brosnan, Dr. Horvath as we talk through these things. And we've also got the USGA 500 yards from where I'm sitting with their green section team, and we're working through some of these. How can we combat this new winter traffic that we're seeing really since COVID, right? Since golf boomed, it's just nonstop. As long as it's daylight, there's people on our golf courses. And if there's not snow on the ground in the winter, there's people on the golf courses. Are our tees big enough? And we try to explain it to, some of our team, our senior leadership team, whether it's if we had a restaurant that was normally seating 50 people, and now all of a sudden we're expecting 150 people, we've got to do something. We've got to make the restaurant bigger. Well, for us, we need to do that infrastructure change on our tees, especially par three tees, shorter par four tees, walk on, walk off areas. We need to get rid of a bunker on the golf course to allow more room to walk up on the green. Do we move the cart path to another side? There's all sorts of things that we've got to, accept now that, hey, this is a bigger deal. This is a bigger sport. This is a bigger volume of people. We've got to make some of these areas bigger. So just this past summer, we spent some time on course two. I talked a little bit about the U.S. Open tees we built, but we did several of our white, green, and red tees. We're seeing more golfers now transition from the white tee, which is our average male tee, down to the green tee, which is our senior, that were never built to handle the volume of golfers that are playing there. So we expanded those by quite a large square footage. Talking to Dr. Jordan Booth about some studies he's worked on with some late season slow release fertilizer applications. And I believe, Dr. Brosnan, you and I talked about that as well. What can we do on our tees to help them get ready for spring this fall? So all of those things are things that we've got to constantly work on. Managing the turf now where, it's September 2nd, we're not mowing every day because we're getting to speed. We don't want to remove a ton of grass. So we back off our mowing schedule. We know that mowing and rolling alternatively can help preserve the putting surfaces for longer. So, there's just a large amount of things that we're doing as we accept this new normal of 400,000 golfers a year across our acreage, which is roughly still the same. So do we build bigger tees? The Cradle, which is our par three course, it was built without any expectations of how many rounds or how popular it would be. And we're doing over 60,000 rounds a year on a 9-hole par three course. And the tees are very small. So we kind of got caught off guard and had to put some driving range mats just on the tees and move those around the first couple of years, where now we've built some in-ground larger artificial surfaces that look better, they play better, they fit in, they don't look like an afterthought, and those have been well received. We don't get any negative comments from the artificial surfaces that are out there on the par three course. So those are all things. Not sure that we'd get away with building artificial tees on the golf courses, but for that situation, it's worked out really well.
Yeah, no, I haven't been there and seen it. It certainly is the right move for the space, given the demand that's there, because the demand is just off the charts high. Another thing I think of when I think of Pinehurst and some of the unique stresses you guys have with traffic and play is just windows to get things done, right? Not that you're going to be doing US Open setups every morning with 8 to 10 people per hole to get that hole ready for daily play. But I just think about one of the things in our jobs working in the turf industry, John, is we got to be responsive to Mother Nature, right? And that could be, we've got to get a herbicide app down, or maybe we need to make a fungicide application, or we need to put a wetting agent down. And sometimes that's hard to schedule out in advance. And, I'm curious, how do you guys go about doing that with sun up to sundown play? And just, is it just a lot of early mornings and a lot of powered by caffeine, or, is there another strategy?
Yeah. I think anybody in the golf industry is early or late. That's when you get it done. It's either get it done early or you get it done late. And we have a certain expectation of being mindful of the golfers out there, and not doing too many disruptive practices while we do have play. On course 2, we are double T start. So in the summertime, when we're doing most of those application and most of those mowing practices, we have tee times from 7 to 9 off of 1 and 10. So by 8:30, we have to be pretty much done with anything we want to do in the morning. Our afternoon wave starts at 1 o'clock. We have tee times from 1 to 3. And so when we come back from lunch at 12, we've got another little gap built in where we've got a second morning, if you will, where at noon we can start on 1 and 10 and do another round of preparations. Whether it's, afternoon greens mow, a top dress, we can rake bunkers, we can hand water, we can make fairway applications sometimes if the gap's big enough and the weather's conducive. But we do have a gap every day. On Tuesdays, we don't have play off the back nine in the afternoon, so we've got a gap there. We just have to be very creative. This afternoon, being Tuesday, we've got a gap on the back nine, so we're getting ready to go make a wetting agent application on fairways here starting at 12:30. So we've got that gap to work on, but then we have a members group that starts on the front at 4, so we've got a tight window to try to make that turn. Otherwise, we just have to finish in the morning. So there are these little nooks and crannies you can, if you will, we can work in and try to get some things done. But it's part of the business. It's part of the deal. We hope golfers want to be here. We hope the tee sheet's busy. We hope we're sold out. We hope people are here enjoying it. I think anybody's dream scenario would be to work on a golf course with no golfers, but not the best bottom line there. So we try to find gaps, ask for a closing on the sheet on the other courses that are single tee. They have accepted the fact that Bermuda grass requires vertical mowing and top dressing, which takes some time. So we do have maintenance gaps thrown in occasionally. We'll have some in the wintertime for dormant applications, roundup on fairways or whatever we need to do. We have some of those booked in. Unfortunately, we have to book those well in advance. So I know now what my January and February closings are for 2026. Now, the weather could be perfect for those applications or it could be terrible. So we have to make adjustments, but we just have to do that from what our demand is for golf to book into those times. We have to go ahead and set that up. Our aerification schedule is set for next year and already in pencil for 27. So we do the best we can with the time that we have. And luckily, we have a bunch of great people on our crews that are flexible, that can work early. Some of them go home and come back later if we've got a project, and just try to make the most of our time when the golf course is empty and we can get some things done.
And how do they handle, John? Like, in the winter now that most of your golf courses are Bermuda grass, there's obviously going to be need for covering events, right? When we get into periods where we're really cold, you know, obviously with you having 250 golf course maintenance employees, there's enough bodies around to pull the covers. I'm curious about, if someone's a paying customer and they've got their tee time on number 2 at February 7th at 11:30 in the morning, and it just so happens that we're covered because it's cold. Like what do they? How does the golf operation handle something like that?
Several years ago, it was very difficult. There are a handful of times I remember greens being covered, and we had to uncover for 4 golfers and come right behind and cover them back up because they had made their trip. They were playing number 2. That was the only day they'd play number 2. So there were times, and this was 5 or 6 years ago, where we would come in at 11 o'clock, uncover greens. It takes us about an hour and a half to 2 hours to uncover course 2, and then go right back from 18 green to putting green at the first tee, 1 forwards, cover them right back up. Luckily, we realized that that's not the most efficient way to do things, from a business perspective or just for your employees. I mean, covering is frankly a difficult task, and you have some injuries, and especially if it's a windy day. So with the help of our HR department and our executive team, we were able to say, we need to get ahead of some of these covering events. If it's forecast to be really windy, we can't wait till Monday morning. We may need to start Friday afternoon. And yes, we'll cover in stages some golf courses. We may do 2 and 4 one day and then 3, 5, and 7 the next day. So we've allowed more time to get those things done. So we're not all rushing last minute to get it done when it may not be the best environment for us to do it. If a group right now, course 9 is still bent grass. If somebody's adamant about playing golf, they can go play course 9. And people are generally understanding. Um, it's kind of like when we first converted to ultra dwarf and not overseeding, and then all of a sudden frost delays went away. And they're like, what do you mean I got to tee off when it's 30 degrees? Like, yeah, you got to go. It's your tee time. And they kind of wanted that frost delay back at that point. And you really test how much somebody really wants to be out there when you tell them to go peg it up at 30 degrees. But so yeah, it's certainly our sales team and our marketing team, and they shuffle people around. And generally, we're not too busy that we can't overcome it. Last year's covering event was, I remember getting home right in time. The Eagles were playing in that snow game, whatever that was, the NFC Championship or whatever that weekend when we covered, and we were able to leave them covered for a few days. Our threshold has changed a little bit for temperature. We're not quite as it used to be 25 degrees. Now we're comfortable at 20. So those things have helped with the covering events as well. Not feeling like we have to do it every time it gets, below 25. Now we've got some flexibility.
Yeah, the work that Mike Richardson's crew at Arkansas did several years ago, I think has been really helpful in that arena, not only identifying a little bit more with a little bit more precision about temperatures that we can get by with, but I think the use of wetting agents pre-covering has been really helpful in understanding the air gap. And I think, as an industry, we're in a really good spot with winter protection there. And I think, we've talked about this, you and Brandon and I, about, we obviously can't do that at scale property wide, but I think there's things we can take from that might be scaling, able to be scaled up. One of those, like, and happy to hear you putting wetting agents on fairways. I mean, I think that's a important part of health during the winter. We have a colleague, Dr. Bowling, and she's real adamant that a lot of our delays in green up on Bermuda grass fairways, particularly in sandier soils like you have in Pinehurst, are very wind desiccation based, right? Having those wetting agents in place in the winter can certainly be an important tool there. I can't imagine the having to be the guy, John, to deliver the message that the crew's got to come in to pull covers for 4 players and pull them back on. So hats off to you for that one. Switching gears a little before we sign off here. You mentioned earlier that a dream scenario about working on a golf course with no golfers, and I think there was an opportunity for that to happen at Pinehurst this year at number 4. I mean, that was a project that kind of got some media attention, right? A greens renovation. Can you talk a little bit just about the scale and scope of that? I know you guys are back in business now, but that was another pretty major undertaking.
Yeah, I mean, course 4's greens were starting to show some signs of decline pretty quickly after they were built, and some things that we did construction wise that just weren't working, and so we had to make the decision in late April, early May, that we were going to close it down May 19th and reopen August 7th. What can we get done in this window? And so we were fortunate to have a construction company in the Bar Golf come in and dig out the greens, put new drainage in, new mix, and with the help of Pike Creek Turf and getting some Tiff Eagle sod, that we sent mowers down to their sod farm and had them start working as if they were greens early. So they got the mowers and were mowing down to what we wanted as our heights and frequencies before the sod got here. We were able to get that project done. The greens just weren't up to Pinehurst standard, and we wanted to stop trying Band-Aid fixes. And our owner himself said, just rip the Band-Aid off, let's get these things fixed. And so we did it, and certainly weather cooperated with that hot August and getting us ready for that sod to knit together, root down, and that team on course forward. I mean, the work that went in, everything was really really well done. Opened with really positive comments. Um, Certainly, there's a premium to having to do it in that short window of time. Anything you do that fast isn't necessarily going to be cheap, but as busy as we are and as many people as we had on the books, it doesn't take long to justify the cost from sod to sprigs or vice versa. So, um, yeah, things that, Dr. Brosnan, you and I sat in the office that day just hashing out a list of things we need to look out for. Um, if you're growing sod or for production, you're fertilizing, you're spraying a ton of fertilizer or spreading a lot of fertilizer. When you're trying to grow greens, that's not the case. So, can we back that down and start taking our greens from Adel, Georgia to Pinehurst? Let's get them to a green state before they get harvested and get them here. And they were very cooperative with how they were able to manage that section of the field, how they harvested it. That way we weren't laying sod cross grain. They harvested one direction, we laid it one direction. Just a lot of things really went well for us to be ready and open in that short window. And now you're your own worst enemy. Now we've kind of set the standard that we can rebuild a golf course in a little less than, what's that, 3 months. So uh, we'll have to see what the next project holds that may be down the pipeline here pretty soon.
Well, and I think you hit on a real key point, right? That the endeavor wasn't cheap, and I'm not going to ask you to put a number on it because I think that would be hard to do given the scope of everything. But I think it's a real key point. We've got a lot of folks listening that work with smaller golf courses in their counties through an extension capacity, and there were golf courses that struggled this year, and it doesn't take real long for a current to rise within a membership or in a golfing community at a course about, well, we should switch the greens out, with a real lack of understanding about what's involved in doing that. And you guys, kudos to you for getting it done, because just a massive job, but not something that I think the local country club could take on and be as successful with as you guys were. Because I mean, the amount of moving parts to get greens mowers to a sod farm and uh, get things dialed in, to a level that you could get closer to playable at install, was no small task. And then, the even just the system that you guys came up with to work through numbering pieces of sod to make sure that the grain was aligned the right way. I mean, a really, really intricate and a involved procedure that would be hard, I think, for clubs to take on if they wanted to go down that road. And we need to make sure we keep beating that drum. I know Brandon Brandon told me once he was working with a course and ran into, this is a new thing. We always had Google agronomy, right? But now we have Chat GPT agronomy, where a member went in and looked at Chat GPT about things that they should be doing and gave them an answer. And, luckily Brandon was involved and was able to kind of get that thing back on the straight and narrow. But it's important for us to beat the drum of what's what's within bounds for a given property and the resources that they have. And while we're talking about greens, you mentioned course 9 earlier. It's been a really tough bentgrass year, uh, particularly in Eastern Tennessee and Western North Carolina. I think I was telling you before we hit record here that I think it's been certainly the most challenging year for bentgrass since I've been at Tennessee. I think Brandon would echo that as well, and on his end. And looking back, I did a little bit of analysis over the weekend. I had been saying, I think this is the hardest bentgrass year since I've been at Tennessee, but hadn't looked at any data to kind of see if that was true. And I think 2012 is the year that everybody talks about as being the really bad bentgrass year that led to all these conversions. So I went back and looked, and this was for Knoxville. Uh, but if you go through the 90-day period from June 1st to August 30th, I mean, the numbers are striking. We had 39 days where we were over 90, which was exactly the same as 2012. Now, in 2012, we had some record highs where we were well over 100. I don't think we had that as much this year. 35 of the 90 days we had rainfall. Our rainfall total in 2025 was a little bit lower than what it was in 2012, but still 35 days within that window it rained. But the number that just jumped out to me was humidity related, that 88 of the 90 days, uh, we had relative humidity values over 90%. And then this was nuts. The daily average relative humidity was 76% for that 90-day period. That all kind of sets up to a really, really stressful environment for bentgrass, even the most optimally managed, intense, with all the bells and whistles bentgrass. That's going to be hard. And then you layer on all the post-COVID traffic, it's even harder. How did things work out for number 9 this year?
Yeah, I mean, certainly a struggle. It was the hottest July on record, followed by the wettest August. And again, your Google or your Chat GBT agronomists are going to say, well, it rained. What do you mean the grass is suffering? It rained. We're like, yeah, it was 95 degrees when it started raining, and then it cooled down for a minute, and then the sun came back out, and you saw all the steam rising from the green. That's not a good thing, when it's that hot and humid and muggy, and you've replaced all the air in the root zone with water, and it's just everything's drowning. And again, the traffic, the golfers, certainly a hot July, followed by, again, the at-home agronomists say, well, it's not been that hot this August. Well, yeah, it's still been really wet, followed by that brutal July. You can't put a pinpoint on one day because, like you said, it was never, over 100 a lot. But I remember the 2012, 2013, those summers where we were about 65 days in a row. The daytime high was above 90 and the nighttime low was never below 70. So there was just no recovery time at night for the bent grass. Certainly similar to what we've experienced this summer. Best fungicide programs in the world just don't compete with Mother Nature. A lot of what we've learned from Bermuda grass conversions and tree removal and air movement and sunlight are helpful to bentgrass. It's not just the Bermuda grass that needs the air, the sun. Man, these bentgrass greens really could use some light in the spring and fall, and helping them get ready for that brutal summer and the air movement that comes along. So yeah, 9. It's been tough on us this year. Um, Luckily, we have the other 9 golf courses that they can go play, and we can take a little bit of heat off of it. But here, some people love playing course 9. So Jack Nicklaus course is a beautiful golf course, and they don't care if it's bentgrass or Bermuda. They don't know the difference per se. They just want to play that golf course. So that can be challenging for us as managers to know how to communicate that message to, let's get this one off the books for a little bit. Let's let it take a break and fight the demand that people just want to play that golf course.
Yeah, no, and I think it's the natural temptation or reaction would be like, oh, we just need to convert to Bermuda grass, and like I get where that comes from, but I think it's a one-off year. The past 2 years were great for bentgrass, and we had bentgrass greens do really well in this region, right? And like you noted, we're just kind of at the bay of Mother Nature, and luckily, we're at a point now where temperatures are cooler, and we're getting into my favorite season, the POA season, right? And all the things that come with that. But that's also a time for bentgrass recovery. And I know a lot of courses in our area are getting ready to go through core aerification, and some are going to consider interseeding. We've got some better germplasm now that is probably more heat tolerant. I don't think anything's going to be 90% humidity tolerant for 90 days, but we do have better germplasm that will put us in a better spot with bentgrass moving forward. So it'll probably be a constant debate of what's right for this region in terms of what's optimal for greens. Last thing, John, before I wrap up, I've got to bring up a GCSA. I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to bring up for our GCSA attendees here their information to get their CEUs because I know that's of interest. These have nothing to do with pesticide credits. Um, these are only for golf course superintendents that are looking to get their continuing education units from the Golf Course Superintendents uh, Association of America. Zoom, I got a new computer here, and Zoom is not letting me bring that up. So if you need your GCSA CEU, what I'm going to do is I'm going to encourage you to email me, and then I can provide you that event approval code as a PDF. I apologize for the technical difficulty, but today's been a day of technical difficulties, John. We've got echoing, not being able to share screen with our GCSA CEUs, but we will power through. I guess last question for me, because you got to get this wedding agent app down. You got narrow windows at Pinehurst, so I'm not going to let you be late. What's next for you guys at Pinehurst? I mean, I know you talked about the 2029 U.S. Open, and that's a big deal, but like, there's always things going on there. You opened a new golf course last year. Like, what's next on the radar for the team in Pinehurst?
Yeah, so the shaper for course number 11 moved into town yesterday, or Sunday. So we will start construction in earnest on course 11 here probably early October. We've done some selective tree removal clearing type things on course 11 over the last several months with Kevin Robinson and the team down there, and getting it ready to be a golf course. So that'll be part of the sand mines property just south of here by a few miles. So we'll have construction starting on course 11 with a anticipated opening of fall of 27. So that will be on the books. Just prior to that opening, we'll have the U.S. Women's Amateur in the first week of August of 27. So we've got the Women's U.S. Am coming in 27, and then like I said, we're in prep mode for the back-to-back men's and women's U.S. Opens that we'll have in 29. Slightly different than last time. We feel like the women will play first and then the men, which was opposite of what it was in 2014 when we did the back-to-back. Big difference for us will be that we were bent grass in 2014, getting ready for back-to-back championships. Now we'll be champion Bermuda grass. So looking forward to getting ready for that. Back to the bent grass conversation a little bit. We were spending a lot of times really stressed to worry about keeping bent grass alive. That was the motto around here, was to try to get through Labor Day with just greens that were alive. Now with the ultra dwarfs, we're just trying to constantly make them better. So our mindset and our mentality is a little different on what we can do to push these to a higher level of performance. And again, just welcoming guests. That's kind of what we instill in our crews is, we don't need to look too far ahead. We've got people here today, tomorrow, the next day that expect that level of conditioning. So we need to do our best every day, and that helps us prepare for those big deals.
All right, John. Well, I'm going to leave it there. We will see you in Knoxville here in about 6 weeks or so for our Beacon event. For those of you listening who aren't familiar, John brings in interns to kind of work for him during the summer. He had 2 UT interns there, and Beacons are kind of 3, excuse me, thank you. 3 UT interns this past summer, and hoping to continue that tradition. We have our Beacon event where we place students with job opportunities kind of throughout the turfgrass industry, and it's got a real national footprint of not only golf courses coming, but we're hoping to have some sports fields and some of our fertilizer and chemical companies looking for student interest and student interns too. So that'll be coming up in October. So I know that myself and my colleagues, John, we look forward to seeing you then. And for those of you listening, we will see you in October for our final Turf Tuesday of the year. It'll be another World Cup update from Dr. Sorokin's crew. So until then, we'll see you then. Enjoy the rest of your day.